Hello, and welcome to the Digital Workspace Works podcast. I'm Ryan Purvis, your host, supported by our producer Heather Bicknell. In this series, you'll hear stories and opinions from experts in the field, stories from the front lines, the problems they face and how they solved them, the areas they focused on from technology, people and processes, to the approaches they took that will help you to get to the grips with the digital workspace inner workings.
Super. So do you want to introduce yourself to our audience?
Yeah, sure. Hi, everyone. My name's Diane Nield. I'm a director of Lead Coach Manage, which is a consultancy. We specialize in training and developing future leaders. And also, I'm a Master Practitioner for Wellbeing in the Workplace, which is an area that is very busy at the moment.
I'm sure. I think now that the government has provided, or at least the UK government has provided a bit of a plan to exit, I think there's a little bit more, not necessarily relaxation, but a little bit more comfort around some level of certainty.
Yes, and I think that's been the buzzword really, Ryan, for the last 12 months, the uncertainty that people have faced. But as we start to come out, obviously we're coming out of lockdown here in the UK, and this is kind of the third time it's happened. We're pinning lots of hopes on the vaccination program. As spring is now coming through the 1st of March today, moods are definitely lifted, but there is still a massive amount of people that we're continuing to work from home, lots of pressure, lots of furloughed people, uncertainty of jobs, etc. So it's a telling time, it really is.
Yeah, you mentioned the furlough scheme and that sort of stuff, but I think it's not so much people wanting to be paid to stay at home. It's more that purpose of work that they're looking for.
It is. You're absolutely right. And there's a recent study actually by Westfield Health that has looked at 3 different cohorts of those that have continued to work, those that are furloughed, and those that are working from home. And there's a lot of commonalities between the 3 groups in that they all are worried about the future of their jobs, but they're looking at people, so those that have continued to work, so sort of like manufacturing, etc., plants that we work with, who have to go in, and there's lots of COVID testing going on all the time. They're looking at people who are working from home and saying, oh, you get all this time with your family. We don't. We've worked every day because obviously we've got to produce the food that lots of people were initially hoarding. And they're sort of looking enviously at those working from home. Those working from home are saying, well, at least you get out and you're able to still have purpose, whereas we stare at a computer 8 to 10 hours a day. They tend to do more work because they want to be seen that they're working as well. And then you've got the furloughed people that some of them have said they're living their best lives because they've really tuned into exercise, etc. But many have lost that sense of purpose completely. That's where you then start to get into negative thinking. Moods definitely are pulled down, losing routine, etc., and actually saying, what is my future? So there's an awful lot of people that I do one-to-one coaching with that are really struggling.
Yeah, I can only imagine. I mean, when I look back to when we were in the UK, the first lockdown, as you mentioned, and we went through the lockdown in November before we flew out to South Africa, and we had a small lockdown here. It didn't change our lives too much. Going now, we're a year down the road, almost a year and 3 weeks time. I don't know how we would have coped with another lockdown with 2 kids and our kids are young, but being able to work anywhere in the world has definitely changed the game a bit. And I've spoken to 2 other people today that also took the opportunity to get out for December, to Greece and to one place in Greece and one place in Cyprus, where the risk has been a lot lower. And they, said that's the new normal for them. They don't have to be in an office every day. So for them, it's a psychological safety thing.
And that's going to be the difference. That I was on a call with some leaders last week, and there's an awful lot of talk. Things like absenteeism and presenteeism are seen as all-time lows at the moment because everyone's at home. And I don't know whether you've noticed, but hardly anybody's got a cold at the moment either because we're socially distancing well, which is great. Yeah. But that ability to work anywhere in the world. And I think that's what's changed about our business as well. In lockdown 1, we could, the business could have just gone down because we were going out to see our clients, maybe mainly UK based clients. We're also providers in Greater Manchester for the Business Growth Hub, so we were doing a lot of training externally for them. So we were out of our homes all the time seeing clients. So we had to sit back and say, right, well, how do we look at this? How can we actually still keep this business going? So it was turning to the conferencing that enabled us to do that. And going back to your point of going to Greece and Cyprus, as soon as lockdown opened each time, my husband and I, we were straight on, out on holiday to Portugal and Tenerife just before Christmas, wherever we could go, because we can still run our business from wherever we are. So long as we've got a decent Wi-Fi code, we can still run it.
Yeah.
Which is great for us.
Yeah, I mean, I think that is so cool that you could do that, because if you look at most roles are actually remote-based roles, if you think about it, which means from a business point of view, you can actually hire anyone that's within plus or minus 2 hours time zone.
Yeah.
Of yourself. It's unfortunately those, as you mentioned, the sort of frontline operators, a hairdresser, a cook, a cleaner, they're the people that, their job still is at that location.
And that's really telling for especially us ladies that I was looking at a photograph of me the other day, 12 months ago, and my hair is so much longer now, so much grayer. I've even got my husband doing my roots at the moment. Things are really changed in our home, but he won't let me cut his hair, which I'm quite disappointed in.
Oh, I can understand that. A couple of weeks, it got to about during lockdown 1, I think it was about 6 weeks before I let my wife cut my hair. But I don't have a lot of hair to work with, so I've got to protect it. You mentioned something and I wanted to go back to it. Oh, the being always available aspect to working. Now, because you're at home, I mean, I went through a bit of guilt initially where I felt like I had to be working all the time because you'd pop out to help the kids downstairs, or you'd be cooking dinner. We did what's it called, where they deliver the food in a box and you cook it.
Oh yeah, fresh.
How it was called? HelloFresh. Yes, we did HelloFresh. So I used to pop down at 5 o'clock and cook that meal, but other guys would still be working. So while you're cooking, you're still getting messages on Teams or whatever it is to carry on conversations about stuff. And I had to put boundaries in, especially now that I'm in South Africa and it's 2 hours ahead. I've got to balance that as well. Have you seen much of that in your research or your discussions with other customers?
I think boundaries, so the area that we work in is called WRAW, that stands for Workplace Resilience and Wellbeing, and it looks at what we call the 5 pillars of resilience. One of the pillars is energy, and when you think about how you build your energy, we look at sort of the physical aspect, nutrition, hydration, etc. But a big component of energy is boundary setting. So we have long conversations with individuals and teams around what boundaries are you going to put in place. And when we look at a team or a whole organization, and one of the pressure points in that system is workload and not being able to step away from the computer. It's about taking ownership of that and sort of saying, how can we change that? What boundaries can we set? If we were in an office, would we behave the same way? What is making us behave in this way that we feel that we can be available to everybody all the time? So it's about changing that mindset and communicating with your colleagues that they will see that change as well. Because if you just put a boundary in to say that, I won't be replying to emails between, 12 and 1, so I can sit down and have lunch with my family. Some people might not like to see that because they've been used to seeing you at that time when they've wanted it, or putting times in your calendar when you've not really controlled that. So it's very important to, when you do set your boundaries, that you inform and communicate out why you're doing it. And people are very accepting of it. I'm working with a big global pharmaceutical company at the moment, and they are absolutely encouraging their people to sort of say, take time out, go for a walk, leave the screen for every 20 minutes, walk away from the screen, check your eyes, because you can get to the point where you're finding more work to showcase that you're still there to everyone, and you don't need to do that. And going back to your point about psychological safety, so I'm doing a diploma in psychological safety at the moment, and there's an awful lot of case studies that we're looking at through Professor Amy Edmondson's work from Harvard. And a lot of the time is that people don't speak up, people don't feel that they have a safe environment to speak up, about and say, how can we change things? Because they may be judged. They may feel that they might be judged or set back for saying this needs to change. So they just carry on that cycle.
Yeah, it's interesting how so in the UK, I worked one way, but I got to South Africa, I slightly changed. And most of the reason for the change was a 2-hour difference. So because we were 2 hours ahead, in the UK, I had an hour booked out for my sort of brain work.
Yes.
Because what was happening, if you didn't book something in your diary, someone else would book something in your diary. So you'd end up with, like today, it's just back-to-back calls the whole day. So I used to have a slot booked out, which was my 1 hour of, it used to be fitness, or it would be time with the kids, or whatever it is. But it would be a break from screens and all that sort of stuff. And then we came here, so I canceled that slot. I said, well, I don't need that slot because I've got all this time in the morning to go to gym and all that sort of thing. But after about 2 weeks of not having that break, and just doing back-to-back calls, you get to sort of 3 o'clock in the afternoon and you've done nothing, just sit on calls, and you're mentally exhausted because all you've done is be switched on the whole time. So I've had to put it back in again. Now, obviously, every so often I have a call that goes in there, but at least it gives me some sort of buffer before the end of the day.
Yeah.
So that you can actually do something besides just talk to people on the phone all the time.
Absolutely. And sometimes, there's a few leaders now that are actually putting on the bottom of their emails, their signatures. Sometimes you might want to speak to me on the telephone rather than, we've got into this habit of having virtual conferencing all the time. And that, you have to be so attentive in that point that if you're in a boardroom and people were in conversation, you'd be looking elsewhere, you'd be, drinking water, you'd be writing things down. You're not constantly staring at a screen as we are now. And that's where the exhaustion comes in. I'm so pleased to hear you've gone back to putting that time back in your calendar, because you made some really fantastic changes. The first time we spoke, I was really impressed at how you'd recognized that you needed to take that time to step back, recoup, recalibrate and go again. And that's what it's all about.
Yeah, I think maybe we should go through some of that. We met on the Virtual Non-Execs group.
Yeah.
And then we sort of chatted, and I did the survey, the WRAW survey. I don't know if you want to give some background to that first, and then we can talk about sort of what came out of that.
Yeah. So the WRAW program is developed by a group of mental health professionals, London-based mental health professionals, and it brings in cognitive behavior, positive and cognitive psychology, and it's a psychometric questionnaire that you complete. It takes about 15 minutes. It's a link I send you. But what I find from it is it not only gives me real insight into an individual, it's a great platform for conversation. There are many people that sort of dial into coaching sessions and are unsure of how much they can share or want to share, whereas this gives us that platform for those conversations. We talk about energy levels. It's split into 5 pillars of resilience. So it's energy, future focus, inner drive, flexible thinking, and strong relationships. And we go through each one of those pillars, looking at not just at how you score, because that's kind of that moment in time that you did the report. You may feel very differently when we speak, but it's also, where you want to be, what you can actually do to change. And, there's some great hints and tips that we can share with you. And incidentally, on that note, starting today on LinkedIn, we're putting posts every single day of people that we've worked with, put on a bite-sized video with my colleague Sue, who are going to share some of the hints and tips that they've put in over the last 12 months. Walking seems to be like the new black, really. It's kind of everyone's got into walking. But, when you walk, you've got that visual stimulation, you're taking in vitamin D. A lot of people walk and talk on the phone. I personally listen to audiobooks. So that's my way of checking out and having that hour and a half time for me. And that self-care piece, I think people have learned to try to be a bit more selfish with their time. And that is working really well for people. At least they're getting outside.
Yeah, and I don't think it's selfish. I think it's self-care.
Yeah.
You just say vitamin D. I mean, I use an app now so I can measure my vitamin D while I'm walking.
Ooh.
And I obviously take a tablet as well, so I measure that as well. Like you, I listen to something, so it's either podcasts or I do my calls that I need to do. But it is to get out. And I think you need the time also for your brain to not only be absorbing information, but also to wonder a bit and solve problems that you don't. If you just back to back all the time, you don't get a chance to do that.
You're absolutely right. And allow your creative part of your brain to kick in as well. Like you say, problem solving. Sometimes you're walking along and say, why didn't I look at it from that perspective before? Because actually you've allowed your brain to be more creative. And you've got that freedom then, rather than when you're really pushing yourself, sometimes it just doesn't come. But yeah, that time out for me is fantastic. And there's a fantastic analogy. Enzo Ferrari was asked many years ago why his cars were winning Grand Prix when obviously Ferrari was doing very well, and they said, what have you changed in the car? Is it the aerodynamics and whatever? And he said, the essential part of a car is brakes, because a track has corners. So you've got to learn to brake and then again. And that's really my motto in life. It's kind of making sure you build those brakes in to be able to do again.
No, I think you're spot on. I mean, with what we're doing now with this digital way of working, it's too easy to not have those gaps. You don't have the commute anymore. You don't have the go get lunch because you're at the office and you need something to eat, so you walk outside. You're at home, you might shoot downstairs to get something to eat out the fridge, but then you're back up in 3 minutes.
And you've got a danger of probably doing about 500 steps in a day then.
I've still kept my target of 12,500 a day. So
that's a very admirable target. That is, wow.
Well, ironically, in the UK, it used to be 15,000, but we walk less here because you drive everywhere, and it's just one of those. So 12.5 is still the target, but yeah, ideally 15.
Wow. Wow, good on you. Yeah. Some days I leave my office, and when I've got, we've got back-to-back workshops on, and so it's unavoidable on some days, but I've probably done 1,000 steps in the day. And then I'm sitting there thinking, God, why am I feeling so lethargic? Why, so it's so important as well that, when you're online, is to hydrate. I say to people, if you're going to take anything away from our conversation, just drink more water. Your brain is 80% water, and you'll lose about 2.5 liters a day just by existing, perspiring, water vapor, urine, that's what you'll lose per day. So most of us are walking around dehydrated, and we expect our brains to function just like, automatic. Come on, what's letting me down today? Why have I suddenly got a brain fog? Perhaps maybe have a glass of water and see if it makes a difference.
Yeah, I got into the habit, and the reason I know it works, so every morning I have 2 glasses of water, and I can almost feel as I drink it, and this is why I'm bringing it up, as you drink it, you can feel it actually go through your system, and then you haven't had enough, and then if I have it later on the day, then I know that, oh geez, I let it go too long. So yeah, I think you're spot on there. Go back to the RAW report. I mean, are you doing that now as a common thing with your customers, or have you got other tools you use as well?
It's pretty much 8% of our business now. And in the leadership development, we'll do other questionnaires, we'll do like behavioral styles, learning styles, communication skills, all that sort of stuff. But RAW has become so important, and companies are now recognizing this. For every £1 that's invested in this area and we work in sort of the resilience, not mental ill health. We're building resilient teams and resilient individuals. If you invest £1, on average, you're getting about just over £5 back. And that's the latest Deloitte data. So they analyze this every 2 years. And some organizations have really changed their culture and that of psychological safety. They're seeing about 11 to £15 return on for every £1 invested. But it opens so many doors for people in that they're able to speak more frankly about how they feel, and that some are really struggling to navigate through problems. So we're giving them different tools on how to look at that in a different way, how to frame things better so it comes across more positive, how their brain works, what hormones and neurotransmitters they're releasing when they are under stress, and when on the other side, when they're relaxed and they're feeling really chilled and motivated, what hormones are being released then. So it's encouraging them then to think about that mindset. And if you're framing things more positive and thinking about when you're in a meeting about what went well as opposed to what didn't go so well, you'll then start to see the mood change so much in the team. So that's really important.
And are you measuring the mood somehow? I mean, are they answering that through surveys beyond this, or is it sort of coaching?
What we tend to say is really, once we've got a baseline RAW report, then we'll do one-to-one coaching with individuals and team workshops where they'll basically build a charter on how they're going to support each other. And then we'll say 3 months later, let's repeat that RAW report and see, how far you've come. And then let's look at, so we never work on all 5 pillars at the same time. We pick out, if it's a team, a couple of pillars to work on and then track and that measure. And that's what I really like about RAW, is that you've got that outcome-based measurement that you can look at. Incidentally, on the psychological safety course that I'm on at the moment, there's a scan for that as well. So RAW and psychological safety, they go hand in hand for me.
When you say scan, you mean a CAT scan or a functional scan? Or
it's 7 questions, and they can be done in 5 minutes. But it's all about the conversation, the team conversation. And, psychological safety is, Amy Edmondson talks a lot about teaming. It's about, Google's data over 5 years is Project Aristotle. And they looked at how they can get the best team. What does the best team look like? And you might think that's the collection of the best brains, etc. But a lot of the time, it's about how people come together on a social aspect as well, how you get the opposites that attract and bounce off each other and debate to get really, really good ideas coming through. So, that scan basically looks at how that team works together, and do they feel that they can actually say things without being judged or walked over, etc. So it's a very interesting field, and I think that's the next big thing that companies are really looking at, is psychological safety.
I can only imagine. I mean, one of the obvious, the common sort of questions is, now that we're going out of lockdowns and in theory everyone will be vaccinated on the planet for the next 2 to 3 years, do we go back to the office now, or are we going to stay in this hybrid model, or are we going to stay remote working?
Yeah, it's a good question, because I think moving forward, like you say, people have found, Sue, my business partner, and I, we'll definitely stay online, because we're working with global teams. Now we work with China, Japan, we've got the USA this afternoon. If traveling everywhere, which, in our previous lives, we worked in the pharmaceutical industry, and every week you were traveling somewhere. Actually, this medium makes the world a smaller place. You don't get to see it.
Yeah.
Which is the downside, but you actually get to build your business and reach out to much more people with this medium.
Yeah, no, you're so right. Because the other question is, if you look at the high streets and the malls, people have gotten so used to online shopping because they've had to get used to it. Will those survive? And I think both will survive, both going back to work and going back to the malls, because there'll always be someone that wants to still do it face to face. Because now it's not the only way. And those things will just balance out naturally.
I agree with you. And I think, women especially, there's a lot of men but women are known for shopping. Aren't we? We meet our friends, we go for lunch, we have a great day out shopping, lots of conversation. If we just did that online, there's that element missing. And I'm very kinesthetic, and I like to feel clothes. To be able to try it on, see how it looks, and ask other people how it looks, and we're losing a lot of that interaction. So I do hope that we won't have everything online still, because I think just that getting yourself ready, going out, meeting friends, that whole social interaction, I miss that terribly.
Yeah, I saw a great poem in a doctor's office about, I hope that through this we realize the value of other people, shop shelves that are full, all the kind of things that we've all, I'll try and find it and send it. Because I think that's what we needed a reset in that sense. It was too much of a rat race, everyone just trying to go faster and become more robotic. And you've almost had to be forced to slow down.
Yes.
And to appreciate what you can't do anymore that you just took for granted you could have done before.
Absolutely. And, a lot of people now are building or doing gratitude journals and things like that. It's being grateful for what you have, which, we're going back to the pandemic again. But there's a really, really great tip that Martin Seligman, who's the father of positive psychology, so he was the one that basically founded this: write down 3 things each day that have gone well for you or that you're grateful for. And if you do that, by the end of the year, you've got over 1,000 things that you have found have gone well for you or you're grateful for. And that's fantastic to reflect back on, and going back to, how you change your mood and things, just looking at those things that have gone well in the day. And it may be, the sun was out today, so I went for a walk. I've just been down the road looking for a cat, and my cat following me down the road, and that actually made me happy because it's like looking for the cat. But those little things we need to remember when people say, gosh, all I do is work and I've got nothing else. Just think about what's gone well for you that day. You will find 3 things. And his data absolutely proved it. He was working with 50 of the most depressed people whose depression scores meant that they were so low they struggled to get out of bed. Just doing that in 1 week, writing 3 things down each day, actually, when he tested them at the end of the week, their depression scores had come right down and their happiness scores had gone right up because they were just changing their mindset.
Yeah, I can only imagine. I mean, it's something I used to do. I'll be honest, I don't do it as much in the sense of writing it down, but I kind of live my day through pictures. So I always try and take 3 or 4 pictures a day, specifically with the kids doing something. And then that goes into a journal, which, like I got a reminder today of 11 pictures that we took the other day. So, I see it that way.
Yeah.
So I definitely agree that it works.
Yeah.
I just think you got to find what works for you.
Yeah. Yeah.
So what do you see the future like then? I mean, what do you see? How do you think work will go? How do you think the digital working will go?
I think there will be a mixture of both the office-based, digital, I think, is here to stay. Incidentally, in my previous roles, even though there was travel involved to different countries, I managed teams who were all home-based. We weren't office-based. So, these virtual conferencing mediums we've used them for 20 years. And, that they will always continue. Whether the number of big office buildings will continue, I'm unsure. I would hate to see not being brought back to life. It seems such a shame. But I think there will be the combination of the two. And a lot of companies are, certainly at the beginning of lockdown 1 said, you're not going back into the office this year. Here's the computer stuff. Here's everything that you'll need to work from home. And a lot of organizations have been very, very supportive of their employees, especially those that are homeschooling too, because that's been so tough.
Yeah. Well, I'll be honest, that's something that we were worried about. Hence we took the flight out. Not that our kids were old enough to be homeschooled, but just to have the school available and place for the kids to go every day. And what's your setup like at home? I mean, are you now building the dedicated office with the standing desk and all that sort of stuff, or you?
We talked about a standing desk, didn't we? And I'm still deliberating over that because I did see some data the other day that said actually there's a use for standing desk, but it's not. The data isn't that strong to say don't sit. I think what the data did say was what we've got is now big, easy backed office chairs. So we tend to slouch. It's not great for our skeleton, but I do find myself standing up quite regularly since I talked to you about your standing desk, and it's hard for me to present. But if I was in a room, in an office, I would always be standing up to present. So it's strange. I find it difficult. Maybe it's because I just haven't got my equipment set up in a way that allows me to do that just now. But I'm still thinking about doing that because I think I'd feel more grounded as well.
Yeah, I think it depends on what you're doing. So I like the standing desk for talking. So like this and that. But if I'm doing something that requires like if I'm studying or I'm writing a document or something, then I like to sit for that.
Let's sit.
And I think there must be something in your brain that says, because you're sitting, you can focus more.
Yeah.
Whereas if you're standing, it needs to be more aware or something. I don't know. But that's normally how I did.
Yeah, so I've got an office at home. I've always had this office. My husband also works from home now, so we've converted the bedroom for him. So he's upstairs, and I do get the shout down, can you put some more paper in the photocopier, please? On a regular basis from him. But we seem to coordinate quite well and are very respectful of each other, especially if we're on conferences as well. It works well for us. But I do, Sue and I are able to go into an office, and we've done presentation. We did in September, we did a whole 3-day virtual conference for a large organization, all on RAW. So, over 100 people all had a RAW report, and it was all aggregated up. So they got the whole organization view. And every day we did videos to them, and because it was different time zones, it was a global conference. So we were online videos, live conference, live breakouts. And that was enormous fun. We did it together, sharing a screen together in the office, which was really good.
Wow.
You get the energy from each other then.
Yeah. How long were the sessions?
So we were on between sort of 10 and 2 o'clock each day.
Okay.
But we've done pre-recordings as well, which they got on demand, which was good for them, because we've got Australia dialing in or dialing out as we, stay on late for us. Yeah.
No, I think those sort of 8-hour workshops days are also gone, thankfully, in the sense of more focused short periods. Yeah,
I think the full day workshop, it's too much to ask of people to be fully in the moment all the time. It's just, it's better to have these short, sharp bursts. I feel much more energized from them.
Oh, totally. And I think there's also that back thought about what are my kids doing, or what's happening downstairs in the house that I need to, so having the breaks also helps. Great. So where can people get hold of you if they want to get hold of you?
Yes, so we have a website, www.leadcoachmanage.co.uk, so all one word. And that basically comes from the way we were trained. So when we both met, 25 years plus ago, working for GlaxoSmithKline, and we had the pleasure of being putting through so many qualifications, and at the time not really appreciating it, but very much appreciating it now. And leadership first, basically lead your people, set that vision, get them to follow you, coach them to be more autonomous and be creative, and then manage them when you need to. Mm-hmm. So that's why we're called Lead Coach Manage. And you obviously can find me on LinkedIn under Diane Nield, and Twitter also Lead Coach Manage.
You just as you were saying that, I realized there's a book that I wanted to recommend to you, which is Turn the Ship Around.
Turn the Ship Around. Okay. Turn the Ship Around.
David Marquette is the author. It's a submarine captain, and it's how he took his crew, who were the worst in the Navy, to being one of the best in the Navy. One of the key things was changing that from a leader-follower mentality to a leader-leader mentality.
Yeah.
So leadership with intent. And as you were saying, I was thinking, I must actually not forget. So worth a read.
It's written down because I enjoy a book.
Good stuff. Super. Well, thanks, Diane. It was good to catch up.
Thank you very much, Ryan. It's a pleasure.
Thank you for listening to today's episode. Heather Bicknell is our producer and editor. Thank you, Heather, for your hard work on this episode. Please subscribe to the series and rate us on iTunes or the Google Play Store. Follow us on Twitter at the DWW Podcast. The show notes and transcripts will be available on the website, www.digitalworkspace.works. Please also visit our website, www.digitalworkspace.works, and subscribe to our newsletter. And lastly, if you found this episode useful, please share with your friends or colleagues.